Yeah.
Who is the entrepreneurial engineer and what does that mean to you?
My background is in pipes, pumps and concrete. I was civil engineer, born and bred. Throughout my career, I've always wanted to challenge the status quo. People think engineers are nerds. They think they're just, tech heads, they crunch numbers. So I'm really trying to break that stereotype. That's when I realized that there's so much value that engineers can bring. What I'm trying to do is extract all the good parts of being an entrepreneur and applying it to being an engineer. I did a group coaching session the other day, and it was about how people going from like 200 or 300 followers to 3,000 followers very quickly. I think there's a lot of people I know who are now saying, "Oh, I wish I had a bit more influence. I wish I had a personal brand. I wish I could actually try and get out there a bit more on social media." And it's actually not that hard on LinkedIn.
It's not. And it's funny. I was talking about it this morning on the train with my dad, and he was saying himself, like, building a personal brand is actually not that difficult. It's just about mainly first step, putting yourself out there, and then following up on like LinkedIn or something like that also goes such a long way. So it's something that I've been trying to do a little bit more, tiny bit more.
Yeah, with your 279 followers.
279 followers. I don't even think it's that much.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn who look like they're very successful and they only have a limited number of followers, because it's not about that. If you can monetize it or you can, get the job, well, it doesn't matter if you've got 100 followers or, 10,000. It's that you got the job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of people talk about quality of connections. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's fair. But then there's also the whole, well, yeah, quality not quantity thing. But on a social media platform, quantity will always win.
It does. It really does.
No doubt. Like, you can't say it doesn't.
It's also funny, like, how different it is, like the social connection versus like the physical in-person connection. Like, it goes a long way in person, but also like the reach is just unbeatable online. You just cannot.
The amount of people that have, messaged me, reached out, the opportunities, even the people I talk to, like, "Oh, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn," or "I loved your post the other day." And it's just an icebreaker. But then I think too, that's the whole point of the 3 Degrees, networking event, is to try and bring back some of that face-to-face interaction, because, hey, an interview's now face-to-face, winning work is usually face-to-face.
Yeah, it's different. I remember the first time I think I've had clients come into the office was a couple months ago. And it was, well,
what are you doing in my space?
Yeah, used to having them behind a screen. There's so much separation there.
Yeah.
And now seeing people, you almost forget how to talk in person to new people.
Yeah.
So it is good having like a new networking event around to kind of go to meet new faces and kind of, I suppose, redevelop the interpersonal skills that were probably missing because of COVID, or just how easy it is to sit behind a screen all day. So,
I always talk a lot about trying to get, young grads or young professionals pick up the phone, talk to people. That's how you solve problems. And I think that's the key to getting people to go through the process. And yeah, collaboration's everything. So,
well, step one of building a personal brand really, isn't it?
Yeah.
5 phone calls or 5 projects or 5 bids for a project with one client, and then probably take them out for a coffee. Who knows what can come next, right? It's a really good, I think it was you that mentioned something like that, 300 coffees to become a millionaire or something.
to build a network. Yeah, it was 300 coffees to build a business.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then I tweaked it to build a network. Because it was
more fitting.
It was literally someone just going, "Hey, after some advice, they're really genuine. It was really nice of them." And then they're like, "Oh, let me take you for coffee." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we had coffee. I'm giving them all this advice, what they should do with their career. They would have started a business. I'm like, "This is how you should frame it. This is what you should do." Realizing that it was just them. I'm like, you need more people. You need to think of how you can make more revenue and other business streams. And they've just walked away from like what is, a $4.50 coffee, or shouting me a coffee, with like all these great ideas.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't hear from them again, but that doesn't matter.
Loading, I think.
Yeah, ghosting maybe.
Maybe that too.
Yeah.
So I feel like we kind of like jumped through a little bit, but I would maybe go back to square one. So tell us a little bit about yourselves,
Yeah.
Who is the entrepreneurial engineer and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so Oh, look, my background is in pipes, pumps, and concrete. I was civil engineer, born and bred. Always had an inquisitive mind when it comes to buildings and construction. And it used to be when I was younger in architecture, so like technical drawing when I was at school. I always like angles and maths, love science. So I think that was where, the passion came from. Throughout my career, I've always wanted to challenge the status quo, come up with innovative ideas, design thinking. How can we do something cheaper and more efficiently? That really came to the fold when I started getting involved in really large mega projects, like $100 million plus. And you'll find that sometimes the bigger the project, the smaller the tweak can have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
So you might just say, oh, I could just change this one thing by 1%. Well, that's $1 million, So when you start playing in a big field, little changes can have big impact. So I think that's when it started, particularly working on Sydney water projects, the whole entrepreneurial mindset. How can you do something differently, challenging, thinking about time and cost and quality. And then I got introduced to development. I saved a developer about, $2 million in about 15 minutes just by reviewing some drawings and doing a red pen markup. I had to go present in front of the whole project team how I'd come up with this idea. And that's when I realized that there's so much value that engineers can bring. And not only that, it's not just a technical mindset, but also, I guess, what we talked about before, the soft skills, working with people, the interpersonal skills, the collaboration. I think a lot of people don't understand that engineers have that side of themselves. There's also, people think engineers are nerds. They think they're just, tech heads that crunch numbers. So I'm really trying to break that stereotype and show not just, the industry, but others that, engineers can be entrepreneurial. Like I look at someone like Elon Musk, whether you like him or not, but technically, right, he's an engineer. He's really good at it. He's an entrepreneur as well. And I think when you combine the both of those things, I think that's a true path to success and creating value, not just for a business or a company, but, the surrounding community and the environment.
Yep.
So the idea behind the entrepreneurial engineer was to try and capture a career and all those things I talked about into training, coaching, mentoring, whether or not it's in groups, individually or one-on-one, or, hopefully soon online, and really try to, give back, not just to, engineering, but to young engineers and to students and to people who are looking to accelerate their careers and get ahead. Because when I was young, I was fortunate to have some really good mentors around me. And I thought, well, a lot of people ask, where can you get a mentor? Like, how do I get a mentor? Because that's just their thinking that they'll unlock something. So I figure if I can try and fill a bit of that gap, maybe it'd help them find a mentor, maybe be that mentor, then hopefully I can help them out as well.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a large gap at the moment for young engineers in particular, looking for someone who's willing to kind of step into that role and offer the advice or the phone call or maybe the quick coffee in the morning before work. There's really not that many people that see the value in it, maybe, or deem that they have enough time to kind of offer that to someone or multiple people. So it's definitely well needed. I suppose that brings me to the question, what would you deem the entrepreneurial engineer? Where's this going? Where does it start? Where does it stop? Where's the line where you will be happy in yourself that, wow, I've done a good job now. It's running itself. On to the next one.
Yeah. So look, I don't know if I'll ever be happy in that regard. I'll always be thinking I could do more or help more people. I have a goal in mind, maybe helping 1,000 students. Having an online community of 1,000 students would be amazing, not just in Australia, but globally. If I could actually have a situation where I could be almost like a university course, right? In my mind, and there are entrepreneurship courses in engineering now in some universities. I really like that. They're very focused on starting a business, which a lot of people think that's just what being an entrepreneur means. What I'm trying to do is extract all the good parts of being an entrepreneur and applying it to being an engineer. So to answer your question in summary, yeah, if I could get 1,000 students and maybe have a couple of courses or micro credentials, or have a situation where I have an online community of people are connecting the dots for themselves and seeing that grow, that would be an amazing thing. And yeah, I don't think I'd be done at that point, of course.
It would just be on to the next thing.
Yeah, be on to the next thing, or morphing and changing it, or partnerships with industry bodies.
Yeah.
Who knows? Just to see it evolve how it has. I always thought I'd start with online courses. I haven't done that yet. I started with giving free advice. I started with discovery calls, and I started with one-on-one mentoring and going through a program that I developed called the Engineering Career Launchpad, and learning from students what they needed and then how to apply that to other students, and then using all that information to make the course better and make the program better. Now I'm looking at group sessions. I've realized I can reach more people in a group setting. And it is difficult because everyone's different. Everyone has their own particular situation. So it does remove some of the personality behind the one-on-one and how niche people can dive into their career for what they want.
I think it's a fine line that you kind of dance on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about trying to say or use common stories and themes, and then trying to apply them, to a group. I just had a group coaching session, which was really fun, and I got a lot out of it. And I'm learning too. I think that's what a lot of people think. Oh, you're this engineer, you've got 25 years experience, you've got it all figured out. Like, no way. Like, I'm still learning every day. I'm challenging myself to do something like this. And I try to tell people, someone said, oh, when will you know to pivot? And I think everyone's pivoting all the time. You're constantly pivoting. You need to constantly look at growth in a way that everything's an opportunity. So just trying to breed that mindset into the students. And yeah, if I had it all figured out, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
It always seems to be the way, right?
Yeah.
So look, I think that gives pretty good insight to yourself and your mindset. But, talk to me, how did you get your start? Where did Darren Flynn start back in the day to end up where he is now? What shaped your mindset?
Yeah, so my first job, I was a dish pig washing dishes for $10 an hour in North Sydney. I walked past the cafe. I just signed a lease for $90 a week for a room in a unit with some friends. Didn't have any money. So I just walked past the nearest cafe and I said, hey, have you got any jobs going? They're like, yeah, you can wash the dishes. I'm like, great. Didn't ask for my CV. They said, oh, have you worked in a cafe before? I'm like, yeah, I hadn't. But I'd wash dishes. So
yeah,
I could wash dishes and I, took out the rubbish, and I sort of hopped between hospitality jobs while I was at uni. That was, it was tough times, right? So that wasn't easy. And I think that was one thing that helped me shape just, being grateful in general. Then halfway through uni, I had an experience where I had a girlfriend that wanted to go overseas. I told myself that if I could pass my engineering subjects, I'd take a gap year. That was amazing. That shaped me into who I am over in Canada. On coming back, I realized that I wanted to learn. I told a story about, someone having a nap during class, and I worked out how much the nap cost them because of their fees for the university course that we were doing. And I think my mindset changed then. I realized that, I went through uni getting P's and C's, and then afterwards ended up getting D's and HDs and getting honours for the second half of my course. And that was when I was really thirsty. I was really hungry then to really dive into university and the detail. I was fortunate to have some good jobs as well along the way, engineering roles, which helped.
Yeah, talk to me about that. How do you fall into them?
Yeah, so one of the guys, I remember his name, Adrian, he mentioned that there was a job going at council at Waverley Council down the beach.
Yep.
And he was going for a design engineer role, and they wanted a construction engineer role. So I just went and pitched for that, ended up getting that. For the first, 2-3 months, I had to be down at Botany at 5:30 in the morning. I was living in Crow's Nest at the time.
Too early start then.
Yeah, so I was,
Reasonable.
yeah. So I had to get up at about 4:30 every day.
Wow.
I think I caught the 5:11 or the 5:06 for St Leonard's, and then had to get a bus from Central. And then when I got there, I'm thinking, oh great, like I'm gonna, get all engineering, and they're like, no, you need to go out with all the working crews and fix potholes and snake drains and build roundabouts and do all this stuff, with all these old like blokes who are on the gangs, right? They're called the gangs. And that really opened my eyes into, jumping out of the truck, getting the tamper, getting the shovel, telling these guys, no, I've got this, and I just really threw myself at that. And I think it was the attitude that I had to do that sort of set me apart from when I got back into the office and I had to go project manager roundabout. All the guys were there, who I just worked with. I'm talking like, old Italian blokes, big Maoris, and they're looking at me like laughing at me because I wasn't wearing jeans. I was wearing like suit pants. And they're like, lucky we know you are. You're telling us what to do, like young punk. So that was really fun. I got a shot at GHD, which was an amazing experience. Working on major projects, which was good. I got a shot at Sydney Trains on undergraduate programs.
Yeah, wow.
So right place, right time. Usually off friends who said that there was jobs going at the time, and just being fortunate enough to say the right things during the interview and just get my foot in the door.
Yeah, nice. So I remember you mentioned you were at GHD for a little bit there after Waverley Council. So obviously GHD, big tier one firm. I'm sure there's a lot of mixed ideas on what that actually means for an engineer and what it can mean for your career. So tell us a little bit about that. What was it like to work at GHD? Were the opportunities that they gave you worth being what some people would call just a number? Or, if you had your time again, would you perhaps go somewhere a little bit more boutique and a bit more niche?
Yeah, look, I'll talk pretty generally about what occurred for me when I was there. I was really lucky. I went into the environmental group as an environmental engineer, started working on major projects, environmental impact statements for like a Newcastle Wharf upgrade, and big projects that, meant that I could learn on them while doing them. The boss I had at the time, he was a little bit entrepreneurial. He took me along to meetings where he was pitching, so I got to listen to him pitch, which, is really important because I always say if you can't sell your skills as an engineer, well, you're not going to have a job, right?
That's exactly right. You need an elevator pitch.
You do, yeah. And I got to see that firsthand. And look, I didn't have a long time in that office because he rocked up to me one day and just said, hey, have you got a car? I'm like, no. He's like, well, you better buy one because you're going out to Rouse Hill and you have to drive out there every day now. And I was like, okay. So I remember I bought this crappy red laser for $1,500. 1988 laser, used to call it the red bubble. It had like roof damage and everything, but it was still drivable. And yeah, I drove it out there for it would have been a good 1.5 2 years. But me saying yes to that opportunity led me to go to Vietnam and work for GHD over there. And, saying yes to that opportunity, then I could have just said, I don't have a car or couldn't afford a car or whatever it was at the time. But, when you look back on pivotal moments in your career, that yes, that was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And it was one that, I was really happy to make. On your point around, big tier one firms and small boutique firms, I always think there's a time and a place, and it depends on the opportunity that's in front of you. It's really about the role and the experience or the opportunity, the project, the role. I think wherever you are, I think you can make an impact. If you feel like you can make an impact, then, whether or not it's a tier one or, you're one of 10,000 or one of 10, then, I think that it still would make the role, meaningful. I do always think though that in smaller businesses, you do have to wear many hats. I find in larger companies, across the 45 people, you might never do a fee proposal, or you might never know how much your hourly rate is, or you're constantly worried about your utilization, or you're not exposed to a variety of projects where you might be in a smaller firm. Yeah, being a number. Yeah, I mean, I remember, at one point feeling like I just had my employee number because I worked outside of the office. No one at the office knew me. So when I went back to the office, it was a bit like, I'd been seconded out, away for so long that I'd sort of missed like the office culture and knowing everyone, like the water cooler chats and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's hard for anyone who's seconded. So I definitely feel for them.
Yeah, for sure. Especially as a young engineer at the time.
Yeah, I had the project team and then that was it. So it wasn't like I got to mingle with 300 people on a Friday night for beers on the balcony, So yeah, it was an amazing experience. Look, I think for me, I'd say to anyone, if you're looking for your first job or, trying to get your foot in the door, just take anything you can get, and I think if you have the ability to pick and choose, then you'll pick and choose based on the opportunity in front of you that's best for you. Whether or not that's a big or small company, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously throughout your time, you've worn many hats, we've kind of delved into all the things that you did kind of on the come up. For, your developer, engineer, entrepreneur, father, just tell us what it's like wearing all those hats. Like, how do you structure your time and manage your time so that you don't, break down or hit a wall and have to stop for however long it may take you to get back on your feet?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm constantly asking myself that one all the time.
I can imagine.
Being in the moment and valuing the moment for whatever that moment is, whether or not you're with your kids, this moment, whatever it is, on the train, on the car, whatever, really recognizing that is a moment in time and giving it 110%, no matter what it is a really big part of the reason why I believe you don't need more time. You just need more focus, because you'd be surprised how much you can get done in a day if you just have the focus of the time or at the time. I'm really big into time blocking. I don't bother time blocking anymore because my workflow is already time blocked. I used to have my calendar all different colors and I'd set aside time for things and tasks. And I always used to say that if I have to write a to-do list, I'm too busy. Early in my career, like I'd write a to-do list and write on my book, and I'd have a daily diary and I'd write everything down, and then I'd scrub it out. When I did it, the next day I'd write a new one, and I'd just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And I think as you go through your career, you get to a point where you don't need to do that anymore because you're just focusing on what's most important and the biggest priority.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're just doing those things every day, then you'd be surprised how much you can get through. The other thing that really helped, and thanks to Anthony Vicino, who is my coach, he's amazing. He's got a theory about the daily 5 fundamentals. I probably get it wrong, but I only say one of them. And one of them is really, what does it look like to win the day? And I really like this concept because it's an idea that before you start your day, the day before or the morning or whatever, at any time, what is the one thing or 2 things, and maybe 3, not 10, but maybe 1 or 2 things that you go, if I can do that today, I've won. I've won this day.
So what is that for you?
Well, today I was having this conversation. That was really important. Exercising is usually always up there. If I can exercise, time with my family, whatever moments that is, 15 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever that may be. And then usually like there's something work related, there's something chipping away at something that I'm thinking about, and some learning and some reading. So that's probably more of the daily 5 fundamentals. But when I look at it in retrospect, I always have something in the day that I go, that's the one thing that if I look back and say I did that today, that I'll be satisfied. And if you do feel satisfied and you will go to the next day and you go, I did that, pat yourself on the back. and then you'll pick something else. The other thing I always reflect on, and this has been proven, that no one on earth has ever juggled more than 11 balls at once. And I like that analogy because a lot of people say you wear too many hats, you got your fingers in too many pies, you got too many fry pans on. Like, you could just list the analogies, right? But then I realized that when you're juggling, right, you can throw one up really high and you can have a look at a couple here, and then you catch that, and you might have a look at it and then throw it up again. But there is a limit on that, and all it takes is for all the balls to be on fire, that all of a sudden you're like, ah. So I think constantly maintaining your pans, your hats, making sure that you're giving them the attention they need. And a lot of them don't need attention all the time. But I think if you can chip away at them, and I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Just chipping away at the things that you want and the goals that you have, and enjoying that journey and being grateful for that journey. So a lot of people say, I want to be this in 5 years, I want to be that in 10 years. And they just keep looking so far down the road that they're not looking at their feet where they're walking.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's been the biggest part, at least of my, growth over the last 25 years, is just realizing that, I used to have all those goals, and now I'm just like enjoying the moment and just chipping away at the things that I want to do, and constantly challenging myself to pivot and use that whole being grateful to fuel, my whole desire to get something different.
So that being said, what are the top three most important things that get you out of bed in the morning, in no order?
Family.
Yep.
Yeah, family's always number one. I do everything for, the family is definitely number one. The people around me. So it's all about the people, businesses, companies, projects, all of that. It doesn't matter. So really it's about the family and about the people, and then about my health. So, health is also, really important. So you got to look after your own health before your others. Put your own oxygen mask on first. I'm like, look, yeah, in roughly no order, but something like that.
Yeah, right.
Because, without those things, like really you don't have much else, right?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. There's people in the family that you're around every day, and then health is wealth.
Health is wealth, Yeah, it is. So, yeah, I think in some sort of order like that.
Yeah.
I always think, I've been very fortunate. I have really good people around me all the time. My teams, the people I work with, the consultants, the clients, there's some really amazing people and the circles I mix in. And I'm constantly having more people come into my network that you go, oh, I'm like-minded with you, or, we've got some really good ideas together. Maybe we're going to do something together. Like maybe we're going to build a duplex. So I really want to do that. But I'm just saying there's always people constantly challenging the whole ideas about what those things are that are important to you. But it always comes back to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
36% of listeners won't subscribe to this podcast, and that's a real shame. If you want to help me share the stories and help others learn and grow, then please like and subscribe.
So we touched a little bit on, all the hats that you wear. So talk to me, right? You went from dish pick to civil engineer to developer. So, we spoke about the dish pick and how you became a civil engineer from that. But how does someone make the jump from a civil engineer all the way to becoming a developer?
Yeah, so I think with developing and building, right, you've got to have engineering. But you also need to have an ecologist or a planner. And I've seen planners move into development because you need really good planning skills to understand the planning framework and the legalities of that. I think it comes back to that whole entrepreneurial mindset. Like in my mind, developers are the ultimate entrepreneurs. Like I should start something called the Entrepreneurial Developer.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm coining that right now. Straight after this chat.
Patent pending.
Yeah, trademark, TM. It's on there, man. Because, that is it. Like when you approach a project, like any project as a developer, you need to break it down into little bits, just like an engineer would. You got to find all the risks, mitigate them all, and then you got to basically stack something up where you can buy something, chop it into little pieces, and sell those little pieces for more than you bought it for. And that whole mindset is basically what I'd already had, like understanding costs, understanding earthworks and pipelines and engineering, that is a formative basis of what developers already need. So to be able to get into that, I don't think was a big leap, because I have seen lots of engineers turn into developers. But I think it was my approach and the segue and how I approached it that got me into that role, because I had a developer as a client. I pitched to them like, take me on. They're like, no, like, you're not ready. I'm like, oh, okay, right. And then I just kept knocking at the door, just saying, hey. And then 3 years later, they're like, hey, do you want a job? I'm like, yeah, great.
It all came full circle.
Oh, yeah, I think the power of the follow-up is definitely there. But I think it's more around understanding value creation. What can you add to a project? Because I sort of define this line between, a project manager and an engineer. Like, if you're a pure project manager, you're just managing a process. If you can add value, that's great. Whereas you're an engineer, well, engineers manage projects as well. But if they can add value, well, and they can sell that value, well, that's the reason where a developer or someone else be like, I want to work with that person, because they're constantly challenging how we do things. And I think as developers, they're entrepreneurs, so they recognize value in that.
Yeah, sure. So how do you see your career progressing from here? What's the next step in your career?
Yeah.
To keep things fun and fresh?
Yeah, it's a great call and question. Yeah, so I've got this networking thing coming up I'm really excited about.
3 degrees of separation. See you there.
See you there. So that's sort of fun. That was just an idea that, I made the logo. I've registered the domain name, made an email address. I've registered the company. I've sent out an invite. And a lot of people just go, oh, well, you know how to use Canva. Like, you're an engineer. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's Canva, right?
Yeah.
Or registering domain names or mucking around with websites. Like, I've had to teach myself that stuff. So I think just as a general theme, as long as I can keep challenging myself to learn new things, then I'll continue to do whatever it is that gives me those outputs. Obviously, very passionate about engineering and working with Sydney Water, very passionate about development, working with Legacy, 100%. There's a lot of value there, an amazing company. I've got the Entrepreneurial Engineer, which I hope have a goal to go to the 1,000 students. I've just created Vincent Ventures, which is a venture capital business to invest in companies and young entrepreneurs. So if there's any entrepreneurs out there that are looking for some seed capital or, someone to work with to help build and grow their business, I would really be happy to meet them, because I think that's the next phase of my journey in my career, is continuing to help others grow businesses, because I've grown it through businesses. Like, I'm trying to grow businesses now, and there's a lot that I think I can give in that regard. And I'd love to be part of, like a young entrepreneur's success, and be there helping them, invest in them, and then hopefully grow something that I could look back and say, I was a part of that. That's sort of where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
I might just be speculating, but it sounds like you're teeing up for a bit of a Dragon's Den TV show.
No. Yeah, Shark Tank.
Shark Tank.
Yeah, Shark Tank. Nah, look, yeah, I mean, why not? Like, why couldn't something like that happen? I mean, I don't think it would be I'd be able to do the deal so large, but, why couldn't that be a thing? Like, I know a guy who did exactly that. He had a startup pitch night thing, and it was where startup companies pitched to an audience, and he was curating that. And now he has this massive business that just does that. And then now they're a venture capital fund, and they invest in those startups. And that was just by doing like a Thursday night beers and chat thing at some pub. So I go, well, that's not the goal, but that doesn't sound like it would be out of reach if we put our minds to it, or you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
No, and that's the whole entrepreneurial engineer idea, right? To go, well, someone said, I'm not getting any roles in IT or, whatever their engineering was. I said, oh, why don't you pivot into cybersecurity? Or why don't you pivot into working on this? Or why don't you look at some other role that might segue you into where you want to be? Or I had a young engineer saying, oh, I want to work in tailings. I said, well, you don't have a job yet. So if you want to get into tailings, you've got to have got to get some experience. You need like 10 years. Exactly. So if 10 years is the goal, well, what can we do now that's maybe slightly different that might get you there? Is it mining? Is it development? Is it some other geotechnical engineering? Or can you go do field work and drill bore logs?
Yeah.
Just to get you stepping through where you want to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's also the way that I see it. Sometimes being entrepreneurial is just taking that first little step. It doesn't have to be a big leap. You don't have to change careers. It could just be that first little step, like going to the pub with a few beers and pitching your idea. Time?
Yeah. Yeah. And all it takes is someone to go, oh, I know a guy. Or someone to overhear that and be like, that's a great idea. Here's my business card, and if you're talking about those hopes and dreams and the more and more you talk about them, not just the more you believe your own bullshit, right? That's not what it's about, but it's more about if you believe in yourself and you have a good idea, well, why not share it with the world? Because I'm sure that, all it takes is someone to go, yeah, I believe in you, or that mentor, coach, or, old mate Bob at the back of the pub. And before you know it, yeah, you'll have your Shark Tank or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that. I think generally there are a lot of people that go, I'm just doing my job, ho-hum. And it's not about, everyone could be happy, right? This isn't about being happy. But I think it's more about pushing yourself and really focusing on your own growth.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually, I'm glad we came back to the whole entrepreneurial thing and talking about young engineers and the way forward, because I want to know from you, what is the industry missing, people-wise?
The industry is missing people, full stop. There's not enough engineers, contractors, managers, project managers, tradies, planners. In our country, we have a serious skills shortage. And it's been like that for so long. And I just have always thought that there's never enough. And it does go in waves, but there's been a general theme, at least throughout my career, where I've always looked to go to market to hire someone and there's just a limited pool. Sometimes there's some more, but most of the time it's limited. So I think generally people. The other thing is there's a really big gap. So I would consider having, 25 years experience or whatever it is. I remember when I was young, someone had 25 years experience, like, oh, wow, right? And then I go, well, there are a lot of older engineers and managers who are obviously older and have a lot more experience than me. But I just see that there's this like layering gap between layers of experience in the market. So I know when someone like an authority or someone comes out or a big company, they got this big hiring push. They suck in all the engineers and whoever it is, and then they get randomly promoted, and then people jump jobs, and then they get promoted into roles that maybe they're not quite ready for, to factor in the roles and responsibilities on big infrastructure jobs, and that just leaves this gap. And then everyone else is trying to move up, but they can't move up because they don't have the experience or the skill set. So I'm finding there's just like layers within the market where you go, oh, if you want to get, and this is always the case, but if you want to get like someone who's got 15 years experience, they've either got to be very unhappy where they are. Otherwise, they're not going anywhere because they've got the job, they've got the security, they've got the projects, they've got the recognition, they've got the reward, and those companies are established enough. So there's sort of like reoccurring themes, I think, throughout the industry, but in general, I think there's just not enough. There's just not enough. There's not enough people.
Sure.
In general.
So splitting it into the two, right? The people issue. How would you solve that? And then the second part, the skill issue. What would you do to solve that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the people issue, obviously, it's skilled migrants. That would definitely assist. Getting more people into STEM. So at a high school level, I know at university, and I've heard this from many people, who the engineers come in year one, you walk into the maths class, and it's like, who's done the 3-unit or the 4-unit maths? And everyone puts their hand up. They go, yep. Who did the lesser math, the 2-unit? They put their hand up. and then they go do a maths catch-up course.
Yeah.
And out of those people, it's usually around half, and then they go do that, and then half of them just don't do engineering anymore because they find it too hard and it's too difficult. And you go, well, that might be in a year, maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 additional engineers that we could have if maybe that was changed. Or alternatively, I look at all of the female engineers out there who maybe go on maternity leave, and then you say, well, how are they going to get back into market? How can the industry be more open to more part-time roles, more working from home roles, or more flexibility? And I know a lot of companies are doing a lot in that regard, but I do see that a lot. And then there are a lot of engineers that are leaving the engineering market, either because they're done with it or they move into property. But I think that is an issue where, there are a lot of people who will leave regionally, or they'll go to another state, or they might go to overseas. So keeping a lot of our talent here and keeping the people here, I think might also help.
Do you think there's anything to do with the negative connotations, from the media around construction and development? It seems to be a big push from the NIMBYs, not in my backyard.
Yeah. Oh, look, engineering is one of those things that it's when a bridge falls down, everyone's like, oh, the engineer. When there's a leaky balcony or a structural fault in a tower, oh, the engineer, right? And everyone is very quick to say, yep, the engineer, right? And you see that in the media, and it is really disappointing. There's not a lot of good news stories, until someone builds the tallest bridge or they break the height barrier in Dubai or something on some tall building. And no one ever says, oh, wow, the engineers, right? It's just a very much big building, right? So I think that does get skipped over a lot. I've seen a lot of engineers be quite damaged by media and the industry and how things are played out, particularly in the engineering space. I think we've got a long way to go to really talk up engineering. I know a lot of people that try to get, kids into construction, and I think that's amazing. And I went back to my point around STEM, getting kids into STEM, getting them to know what an engineer is, and getting to realize that if you want to be an engineer and you do engineering, you can almost really do anything. There are so many jobs and roles out there for engineers. I think moving forward, and it probably won't be in my career, but maybe in yours or others, in the young engineering space, really defining your value early in your career will really make you successful, particularly with AI and all the other stuff, machine learning and robots. That is going to really, I think, shape our world to the point where there won't ever be any other structural defects or failures, because it will all be so precision and built by robots that then you go, well, what's the engineer doing, right?
Yeah.
So I know we talked about this before.
Yeah. The engineer's building the robots at that point.
That's right. Well, the robots will build the robots.
Well, eventually. Yeah, that is it.
But back to your point about skills. So, yeah, I mean, I think universities have a long way to go. I do see a lot of young engineers who can't read a drawing. I find sometimes with young engineers, I know how to use computer programs that I thought that they might know how to use, or I might ask them about something like a KML file and they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, that's a learning curve. But I find now that engineers are they have to be much more well-rounded. They have to know about a lot of things to be competent in a role, not just a very niche thing. So, I think that's where maybe, toying with the idea about more technical part of the entrepreneurial engineer, probably more around tech. And I do have a Bluebeam thing because, Bluebeam is very powerful. And I just haven't done anything with that because it's one of those winning the day things that's probably in about a month or two just to do that. But yeah, I think that, moving with, the tech, I think skill sets, and that's something that, I think tech skill sets, maybe some tweaking in the university sector, minor tweaking, but I still think it needs to be done. And I think too, probably back to the people and the skills, getting undergraduate engineers into the workforce as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of people say, oh, you got to wait till second year and you got to be first year and I know you got to focus on your studies. And I get all that, right? But the sooner someone gets into working, or if you could work during uni, like just work the whole time. Or if universities could say, instead of doing 2 6-month internships, we want you to work the entire way through.
Yeah.
And university will be crafted around the work.
Yeah,
not the other way around.
It's a really funny thing, actually. I always thought that, you know, if you were to get into uni and then get given or get offers from, you know, various consultancies to get into the industry, there would be a lot less drop off.
Yeah.
In the people, and there'll be a lot more engineers around today, and probably a lot more competent young engineers as well.
Can you imagine at graduation, 5 years work experience at graduation, rather than coming out really green with a year?
Yeah.
Like that's a game changer.
Absolutely.
You know, I need to be pitching that now to universities because, you know, I always have this thing. I wish I could hire everyone, right? I wish I could just hire all the undergraduate engineers, get them all in, train them all up. But obviously you got to pay them, right? And I know a lot of companies that don't do that, and that's really disappointing. But if the universities could strike a deal where, you know, maybe some of the larger organizations could do that, I think that would be a game changer for the industry.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, I mean, with that in mind, with the young engineers through kind of university and their pathway, and also the current climate across Australia, and we can only really talk about Australia because it's where we live and work.
Yeah.
But do you think that the current housing crisis and the push for, you know, million new homes by 2026 or whatever it may be, is, you know, restricting young engineers in their pathways and opportunities in the industry? You know, would a client want a project manager or a civil engineer with 1 to 2 years of experience working and trying to push for, you know, an 1,800 lot subdivision and design it with, you know, a small team of young engineers, as opposed to, you know, the established 25 years of experience engineer who knows all of the, you know, the standards and the codes on the back of their hand? You know, do you think that is creating a barrier to enter for young engineers?
No, I think there's almost like two separate issues, right? I think the issue with the housing crisis is, again, there's not enough people and land to meet the housing crisis deficit, right? So, you know, land is one thing. So you don't have the land or the approvals, well, you can't build. And if you can't build if you don't have the people to design and do the build. So those, unfortunately, they overlay on each other to the point where, you know, one piggybacks off the other, and then it's just like this self-fulfilling prophecy of circular issue that will just continue until the government does something. And, you know, I've got my own ideas on that. I see some news about duplexes and trying to make it easier for duplexes. You know, in my mind, if it was maybe 800 meters or a kilometer from every like small commercial center or commercial center, everything got rezoned from R2 to R3. You watch all the mums and dads realize that their old house now is a duplex.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, knock it down and we'll build 2 and we'll leave the other one and we'll rent or sell the other one, right? And that would give density on a measured way, not just in apartments and high rises, which I'm also very for. But instead of saying, oh, we'll just do, you know, 1 for 2, instead of doing, you know, 4 for a 100, right? So, yeah, that's just my idea. I did pitch that to the Premier anyway. But the other thing, your point around barrier to entry, that is around, would I have the confidence? I don't care if it's right. Like, I know a young engineer can do a design or can do whatever it is. And if it's checked, well, is it right?
Yeah.
So say you've got 40 undergraduates, or like a lot of engineering companies do, the design house in the Philippines or the design house in Vietnam or wherever, I think a lot of clients don't even know. They wouldn't even know. So I don't think it's a real barrier to entry. I think the main issue, and what the issue is that because there is a housing crisis and there's not enough land and there's not enough approvals, there's not enough projects, or the projects that you have are already filled by a certain part of the market. And if we could have those additional million houses or whatever the number is imagine all the jobs that would create. Imagine all the engineers that would help learn, grow, develop, and become part of fueling the economy. I think that's the gap.
Yeah, okay. Now it's very interesting. So, I mean, we've been talking for a little while now, but, you know, if you had to give someone 3 points that they leave, you know, or stop listening to this podcast with to take into their life moving forward, what would they be?
Yeah, take your time. Enjoy the moment for what it is, and challenge yourself constantly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. Please like and subscribe. It helps us reach so many more aspiring engineering professionals and entrepreneurs. You can find us on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube.